Hi, I'm John Paul of the blog commentar.com. In this video, we will consider a very important payment message used in the SCT Classic scheme and the SCT Instant scheme, the PAX8. I will first remind you the overview of all the message exchanged in the SEPA Credit Transfer Classic scheme so that we can locate the PAX8 and the parties which exchange it. Then I will present you the PAX8 identity card. What is the name of the PAX8? When was it born? A bit funny, right? Why the PAX8 is not enough? Here we will see why other messages are needed in the interbank space. Then we will talk about the PAX8 message structure and building blocks. And we will end this presentation with differences between ISO 20022 and SEPA requirements in the PAX8. So let's begin with the overview of messages in the SCT implementation guidelines document that we saw in a previous video. The PAX8 is highlighted in green color here. As you can see, it is sent by the originator bank to the beneficiary bank. And we can also see that there are many other messages exchanged in the interbank space, like the PAX2, the PAX4, the CAM56, and so on. But as I said at the beginning, the focus today is the PAX8. We'll get back to the other messages in detail in future videos. Let's consider the PAX8 identity card now. The PAX8 is called Financial Institution to Financial Institution Customer Credit Transfer. It is a message exchange in the interbank space, so either between two banks or between a bank and a clearing system. The message contains customer information. So it's a bit like the MT103 in SWIFT. The PAX8 is used when a party other than a financial institution is involved in the transfer of funds. SEPA uses the version 2 of the PAX8, but the version 7 is already available. Let me show that to you. So if I go to my browser here, and we go to the ISO 20022 pages, and let's move to the payments messages catalog. If I make a search here, let me make a search of PAX8. So you already see there is no version 2, right? But there is a version 7 here. So which means that the ISO standard is already ahead of the SEPA standard. How do I find then the PAX2? Well, I need to go to the ISO 20022 message archive. The link is here. And now if I make a search with PAX8.01.02, now we can find it. So this is the second version of the payment clearing and settlement messages. And you see it was approved in March 2009. So this is the version used in the SEPA credit transfer scheme, also in the SEPA instant scheme. It's very important to know this. Let's go back to the presentation. So the PAX8 was born in March 2009 and puts into its place of residence the message definition report. The message definition report can be downloaded from the ISO 20022 website. The file name is Payment Maintenance 2009. So you can just go back to the page that I showed you before and download that document. Well, the PAX8 is used to move the funds from the sending bank to the destination bank. When the debtor bank sends the PAX8, it is like it is saying to the bank of the beneficiary, here is the money I have debited from my customer. Please take it and credit your customer whose account information is available in the PAX8 message. But the real movement of money between the banks happens only after clearing and settlement. Therefore, the credit transfer must have a settlement date, and the settlement date is provided in the PAX8. It is the date where the funds transfer is done from the originator bank to the beneficiary bank. Now, why is the PAX8 not enough? Remember that the PAX8 is used to move funds from the debtor bank to the beneficiary bank. When the beneficiary receives the funds, we are done, we can say. Why then do we need other messages? The PAX8 is by far the message with the highest volumes in the interbank space. In an ideal world where nothing unwanted will happen during the processing of those messages, the other messages, of the PAX8 messages, the other messages will not be needed at all. But we know that it's not the right way of thinking, don't we? This is because there is no process without exception. Indeed, many exceptions can happen during the processing of the PAX8 messages, either at debtor bank or at creditor bank. When an exception occurs, banks should be able to handle it properly and provide the correct information to their payers or customers. The other messages in the interbank space are used for exception handling. Oh, the exceptions! Our lives in payments will be much easier without them. The PAX8 is used to move the money, but many other messages are needed to handle the exceptions. Now let's look at the PAX8 message structure. The PAX8 message is composed of two building blocks, a group header and a credit transfer transaction information. The group header is mandatory and present once. It contains elements such as message identification, creation date and time, interbank settlement amount, interbank settlement date, and so on. The credit transfer transaction information is mandatory and repetitive, so it must be available at least once, but can be repeated as many times as required. It contains elements related to the debit and credit side of the transaction, such as creditor agent, debtor agent, instruction ID, entry ID, transaction ID, remittance information, and so on. Many are not aware that the credit transfer transaction information contains elements related to the debit side as well as to the credit side of the transfer. They think that debit side information are repeated like in the paying one message, but that's not the case. So it's good to keep this structure in mind and remember that the credit transfer transaction information contains debit side as well as credit side elements. Let's look at the differences between ISO 20022 and SEPA requirements in the PAX8. I think this applies to other message types as well. The final slide is about differences between ISO 20022 and SEPA requirements for the PAX8 message. In previous versions of the implementation guideline documents, this was not very easy to identify. But the current presentation is pretty good and I like it a lot because you can easily see what are the differences between SEPA and ISO 20022 rules. If we take the total interbank settlement amount, for example, we see that only euro is allowed in SEPA, while in the ISO 20022 you can put all the currencies, since the ISO 20022 was made for all the countries. Another interesting thing is the settlement information below. the settlement information element. It is a 4-letter code word, and SEPA accepts only 3 codes, but ISO 20022 accepts additional code words. So this is pretty well highlighted here. What we can say is that in the recent implementation guidelines, differences are highlighted pretty well. You just need to be aware that they exist so that you can refer to them when necessary. That's the end of this presentation. If you have any question, just post a comment below the video. If you found the presentation useful, you can like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can also go to permentor.com and subscribe to the newsletter to receive regular updates about articles and video. Take care and see you soon on the channel.